Before we begin, thank you very much to Dallas L for joining my Patreon campaign. Thank you so much for the assistance and to help keep the channel going. Appreciate it greatly. If you want to do the same, the link is in the description below. I try to offer as many rewards as I can at lower price tiers and some nice stuff at upper ones. So whatever you can handle, if you can handle it. If you cannot, don't worry about it. Just hit like, hit subscribe. That helps me out a lot too. So what you're seeing in front of you is an interesting and different type of tier list for me. Someone suggested this during my January Q&A video. So on February 1st, I posted all my answers to those questions. If you have questions for the March 1st iteration of the Q&A video, go to that previous February video, leave your comment there with your question. One per person, one question per post. Try to keep it fair and get everyone a chance. But one of the ideas was to do a tier list of the Plastic Addict victims, and not to do as my normal tier list, which is Holy Grail to flea market level. No. They wanted a scale that ends with Titanium Megatron. All right, so that sounded funny. We can do that. So we're tier listing all of the Plastic Addict victims. I've done a little bit of modification to the standard tier list here, but also I had to include one. I had to include one specific. So yes, the lowest rung is Titanium Megatron, the absolute worst of the worst, and then we go up from horrendous, terrible, bad. And then the one that I have to admit, it's fair of me to include, I was too harsh. So, like, I will admit there's some toys at different Plastic Addict that, in hindsight, probably should not have been in there. So, standard, Plastic Addict should fall right in the middle of that terrible. And then if I've lightened up over the years, we'll go a little bit higher or a little bit lower. So, let's begin here. And the first one up is Activator Lockdown. Now, to be fair, I probably shouldn't have been reviewing. This is before I had a rule against reviewing gimmicky lines like one-step changers, etc., because they're just trying to do this little automorph gimmick. But I make an exception for Lockdown because his automorph really didn't do very well and left with kind of a floppy mess of a transformer. I think he still falls pretty much right there in terrible. I can admit, I maybe should not have even picked him because he's not like a typical Transformer toy, but I definitely feel like even for the activators, he was definitely on the bad side. The one I really should have reviewed was the Bandit Lockdown because the color scheme on that one is not great. It's not great. All right, Armada Laser Beak. So, let's get it straight. So, this was supposed to be like a roleplay toy thing. I still don't understand why it has two lenses. This is 3D cameras weren't a thing then, so let's not focus on that. Basically the camera mode is okay. The blaster mode is meh. It's the camera with a handle sticking out, and then the bird mode, meh. It's a dull toy all around that really doesn't do anything that's worth a higher price point other than have a sound box in it. I'd still say pretty bad toy. I would still say Laserbeak's still pretty bad. Armada Side Swipe. Alright, so I kind of made a name for myself about how much I hate Armada Hotshot and all of his toys. So I will be the first to admit Armada Sideswipe is by far the worst toy in Transformers Armada. It is a dull-looking car mode. I know your car experts say, I don't care. I don't care. Compared to the supercars and the sports cars everyone else is, it looks freaking boring. Also, way too many gimmicks, incredibly hindered robot mode, bad-looking minicon, and tons of kibble issues, which shouldn't be a problem on a toy that uses so many big solid block parts, and yet still has this terrible problems with kibble. We're going to put it down to Titanium Megatron level. It's a seriously bad figure. Seriously bad figure. Like one of the worst I've ever messed with. Armada Smokescreen. So Vehicle okay, Minicon's great. The Minicon's actually really nice, but it all fell apart on the robot mode. Huge balance issues on this one. Also, like, very limiting. Because of the balance issues, the posability really didn't mean anything. His articulation wasn't that great anyway. The gimmick also meant, for some reason, they decided that the head should like, when you rotate the, for some reason, when they rotate the crane arm around for robot mode, that it should also rotate the robot mode head, which meant the robot mode head lost its articulation too. It's another example of just like too many gimmicks going on. That said, it looks fine. The vehicle mode is fine. The extending blaster gimmick, yes, horrific balance issues in robot mode, but it's kind of neat seeing how big the weapon gets. I'm going to stick him in terrible. Right in the middle. I still think that's about where he should go. Build-A-Rule Skyblast. So I was actually like super happy that I got to be, like, as far as I know, I was the only one on YouTube who had ever reviewed Build-A-Rule Skyblast because the set itself is so rare. So yeah, I feel like I got a little bit of, I feel like I made a little bit of a noteworthy thing here, as well as like just like trashing on what ends up being a pretty big letdown of a toy. So admittedly, for Build-A-Rule, in context for Build-A-Rule, it's actually not that bad. It's inoffensive at best. But yeah, like it's definitely not as bad as the other Build-A-Rules. So in that one, I'm gonna go bad. It's still not a great set. It's still a pretty boring set, and it still doesn't really work as a transformer. But it's not like horrendous or anything. It's not as bad as the other Build-A-Rule toys. Injector kind of falls in the same line. It's a weird concept. It's definitely an oddball. I've kind of grown to appreciate it over the years a little bit. I mean, as far as fusors go, it definitely feels like one of the laziest ones because it doesn't blend the two beasts very well. It just kind of sticks a fish head on top of a bee. Not really that interesting to me, but like it definitely stands out as something unique. I think this is another one that goes up in the bad category. I won't say that I was too harsh on it because it's still not a great toy, but at the very least, yeah, it's I mean, it's at least noteworthy, right? It at least stands out. Optimus Minor. So really, the only thing that's really wrong with Minor is that he's just really boring. He's a humanoid that transforms into a humanoid, and he does so by cartwheeling. So I don't know. It just feels weird. I feel like this is one of those toys where like you could start like you could have a hard time like figuring out which is actually his robot mode because, well, yeah, he's got a more monkeyish head in one mode, but but his robot mode head does have some simian features as well. He also has those big shoulder pauldrons in his beast mode, which is something you normally see in the robot mode. It's a confusing toy, and not a fantastic one, but ultimately inoffensive. The only thing that is wrong with it is it's just dull. I feel like if this toy was anything besides a Transmetal 2, where like both robot and beast mode have a mix of the organic and the technological, if this was a Transmetal, well, Transmetals didn't have basics. If this was just like a standard original figure, and like transforming to robot mode exposed robot mode parts that were hidden in the beast mode, it'd be fine. Still be dull, but it'd be fine. So I'm gonna put him in I was too harsh because the toy itself is just boring, like articulation's fine. The look is actually fine. It's just kind of dull. Backstop. Man, I hate to put Scott McNeil toys in this list, but you can't help it. Backstop did not turn out great. Yeah, Potus Manus, which over the years I did find out that's not what Potus Manus meant. So like I got the Latin wrong, but that's the terminology, Potus Manus. That's just the thing I attached, so that still gets brought up from time to time. I'm not a fan of the arbitrary purple they stuck into him. Still doesn't look right. Low articulation. Admittedly, the beast mode is actually pretty good for its time. I think even in that review, I admitted, yeah, the beast mode is actually fine, you know? It looks fine. It's just where the robot mode makes it all fall apart. So I think this one is, again, I think I was a little bit too harsh. I don't think it really is horrible. I mean, nothing, not a toy I would actively play with or go buy again, but nothing that's like, you know, like nothing that like upsets me too much anymore. Energon Optimus Prime. This one's more divisive because, yeah, I will admit, the toy is not as bad as I made it out to be. I'm exaggerating it for comedic effect, and I'm making fun of its proportions. And, like, that's really, I don't really have room to do that anymore. I've put on a lot of weight in the last year, especially. But the toy itself does have plenty of flaws, obviously. Yes, the proportions on the individual robot, yes. I think the transformation's too simple. I hate how simple the trailer is. But the swapping in the drones and all that functionality, that's fine. I think this, you know, and like, I was going to say, like, doing a different pack of drones so I could swap more around on Prime would have made him a lot cooler. But that's basically what Wing Saber is. So I'm going to put him in bad. I'm going to put him high up in bad. I don't think I was too harsh per se, because it's still, like, probably the least interesting of the three primes from Unicron Trilogy, but it's still, you know, it's still got some things to it. Wing Saber is another one that's just kind of like, I feel like he goes right up there with bad as well. So in that review, I was very divisive about the toy. That's where I did the Golem routine. And it was because the toy looks really, really cool, and the combination function is really, really good. But on its own, it plays terribly. It plays absolutely terribly for a modern Transformer toy, being more of a brick than even a lot of G1 toys, and having a very non-aerodynamic jet mode to transform into. It's a weird one to judge even now. I'm still going to say on its own, it's still a bad toy. And you can have a super cool looking toy and still ultimately say, yeah, the toy itself is bad because it doesn't play well. So if you have it by itself, bad. All right. If you have it with Optimus, good. All right, so here's where we get a little bit weird. So for the Power Core Combiner review, I did basically the entire toy line sans Double Clutch, who I still need to get to someday. So I split this up into the 2-pack and the 5-pack. So this is the 5-packs listing, and the 5-packs definitely go into horrendous. Not many of these work for me. I still hate how like broken and shrapnel looking all the Automorph arms and legs are. I hate the Automorph in general. I feel like if they were solid like Energon Prime's drones, way better. Would have been way better. But no. This stupid little Automorph thing had to get crammed into it. And most of them just look really terrible. Like the core robots, some of them are okay on their own, but most look terrible as a torso. And many of them didn't really function that well. So definitely still like one of the worst Transformer lines I think I can remember. Just like overall, just like a lot of stinkers in it. Bruticus from RID. Again, I believe this one definitely goes into the horrendous pile. It's a mess of a toy. It's a mess of a toy. You can tell that the design itself was probably just like halfway thought through. There's a lot of junk and kibble that really doesn't work out. It's very ugly color scheme. It doesn't take advantage of a lot of the sculpting and tooling that is on the toy. It is just like, you can tell it was just like an afterthought to release an RID just because they had the mold, and you know, we need more Predacons on the shelf to even out the odds. It's a lame toy. It's a lame toy, period. Universe Snowcat. I know a lot of people like the Snowcat toy. I'm not really among them. I feel it is simplistic, weirdly proportioned, and kind of floppy in the wrong spots. I really wish the vehicle mode locked together better than it does. And then you take it and put it in this faux Halloween design where they don't even make it black, which would have made sense. It's super dark blue instead. It's just weird. I'm going to put it in terrible because there is some redeeming elements to the toy, but it is still just a really weird and bad repaint on a toy that's already kind of mid. Titanium Optimal Optimus. A Beast Wars toy with no beast mode. Figure that one out for me. So, yeah, like, it's got its 2 vehicle modes. Like, if this was done as, like, Beast Machine's Megatron as some cheeky little joke, this would actually rank higher because it'd be brilliant. But no, it's just a tiny little Titanium Optimal that doesn't do nearly as much as the original Optimal does, and it's not really well constructed either. I think it's another perfect candidate for the terrible pile. I mean, if you want a desktop-size Optimus, Optimal Optimus, okay, fine. I mean, it serves that purpose. But if you want one that actually works the way that Optimal Optimus should, don't bother. Yeah, again, I'm still waiting for an upgrade on that because the Power of the Prime ones didn't work completely either. All right, here he is, Armada Hotshot. So, what do we think of the boy? So, yeah, the gimmick is intrusive. The robot mode is a little bit too kiddie for me, but that's a personal preference. The articulation is very hindered. It's great in the legs, but terrible in the arms. Yeah, I think this is just all around like the classic plastic addict victim, so I'm going to put him smack dab in the middle of terrible. Still do not like Hotshot. And I've tried giving that toy another chance, even in hindsight. Yeah, I really wish it was done with its original design, like that big wide-shouldered linebacker thing. I know physically it was impossible to make that toy work, but I thought it actually looked a little bit more unique, and I think it would have had a much better range of functionality. Blast Charge. Yeah, the one that triggered the GoBot alert, because it definitely has some like GoBot style aesthetic to it. It's one of the weird Viacons. Yeah, and then like just like the wheel legs that look like erector sets, the big chest rocket things that stick out. Like the chest with the missiles in is as long as he is tall, which is not great. He's back and he's down in horrendous too. Yeah, a little bit redeeming in the vehicle mode, but man, like that robot is terrible. Speaking of terrible, Supreme Cheetor. So where does the toy the size of a house cat go? Hard to balance, gimmicks that don't really work out, easily broken in the case of mine, just kind of creepy in a weird way too. I think this one needs to go down in horrendous as well. Of course, I named that one of the worst toys of ever. It's one of the worst Transformers ever. Which reminds me, like, keep in mind, like, I might shift this around a little bit. So if this, like, keep in mind, this is not like to go back on the top 5, which I do admit I've amended since then. And this is not like a redo of that. So don't like freak out if it's going against my original top 5 worst. These days, I really only worry about the one I call the worst of all time, and we'll get there. Build-A-Rule Hotshot. Just like any of the Build-A-Rules for Armada, it is horrendous. I'm actually going to put it down the lowest here. I think it's Titanium Megatron bad. If you never play with a Build-A-Rule, don't. But also, it's Lego done in the worst way. Gigantic pieces that form like the entire front of the car. No transformation element. Terrible looking robot. Boring car. It's just all around just a terrible attempt at mimicking Lego. Retracts. I've had so many people say they think of me when they see that reissue at retail, which is both flattering and insulting at the same time. This is the last toy I think I would want to remind people of. So it's ironic that the reissue is actually worse because it's missing legs from the bug mode and it got the antenna installed incorrectly. So figure that one out. They've actually managed to make this toy worse than it originally was. It's going down in horrendous. I still hate this thing. I still hate its gimmick. I hate its non-functional robot mode. I hate its inability to transform correctly. Transketo, the most recent victim. So Transketo kind of suffers from just the fact that he's just absolutely hideous as a toy. There are some actual like redeeming qualities to how he functions, but It's just a matter of, like, it's just a horribly ugly toy at the wrong price point that suffers a lot of the problems that a lot of the Beast Wars bugs do. So he's going up in bad. Yeah, he's one of the better toys I've done for Plastic Addict, but not by much. Not by much. Alpha Quintason. So, to be fair, it's not really doing anything wrong, is it? I think as a Transformer toy, yeah, it fails because there's no transformation. But it's representing the character from the show about as well as it can. And then trying to work in as many features as it can so it's not a boring toy. So, yeah, I think I have to admit, I was probably too harsh on that one too, because for what it's trying to do and the character it's trying to represent, it's fine. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's not, shouldn't be comparing it to a Transformer because it's a Quintason. So, I will admit, not as bad as I thought. Alright, the Energon roleplay weapon. So I didn't put the sword on here because we agree. The sword's great. But it's that blaster that is just really boring. Yeah, it feels very forced in because it's barely used in the show after it's introduced. It's got this weird pump in the back that doesn't work. It's just an overall dull Nerf toy. It's just like, it's basically just like a really boring Nerf gun. Again, it's not technically a Transformer, so I can't really make the same comparison. But I'm going to put it in terrible. It's still not great. Energon Hotshot, which I would say is actually worse than Armada Hotshot. I don't like the robot mode, how blocky it looks, the stunted articulation all around the figure this time. The vehicle mode's okay, and then you get the combiner mode, which is like, dead as far as articulation goes. It's meh. I degrade it on its own, not as a combining piece, and that, I'm gonna put him like right there. Put him on the low end of terrible, because I don't think it's quite horrendous. I don't think it's as bad as the ones that are like below it there, but it definitely has to be lower than Hotshot's Armada form. Titanium Menasor. Here we go. We're just gonna straight up do this, and he's probably the toy I was too harsh on. So I try these days to kind of judge everything based on the series they were in. And as far as a titanium toy goes, the Rodimus mold is actually not that bad. And in hindsight, when we think about these toys and, trying to get that Space Winnebago mode actually out there and done correctly, this is really the only toy that takes that full-size vehicle mode and turns it into a robot without a trailer left over or without any kind of armor combining to do. So that's actually kind of impressive. Now, the build of the toy is lackluster, as almost every titanium was. And really the only reason I was so harsh on it was because it's not Menasor. It's just a very lazy Rodimus Prime repaint. But functionally, it's not bad. For titanium especially, it's not bad. That one I definitely was too harsh on. So Luke Skywalker Snowspeeder. So remember, for the Luke Skywalker review, I did both of his toys that were out at the time for the Star Wars crossovers. I would say the Snowspeeder is the worst of the two. Massive backpack, gives him huge weight problems. Bad feeling joints, because that's, again, we're dealing with someone who doesn't know Transformer engineering, so they're just kind of winging it. Vehicle mode's okay. Also, I'm just noticing, for some reason, it's on here twice, so ignore that second one. But yeah, this one was bad. This one was bad, and my eye is itching, it's so bad. Energon Grimlock. Now, we're leaving Swoop out of this equation because we agreed in that review Swoop is actually pretty good. We're judging Grimlock and the Mega Dinobot combination here. So, like, the Mega Dinobot combination is just horrendous looking, barely functional, not really worth what it's doing. And then the Grimlock itself is oddly proportioned. He looks like he's like a tuna can with legs, and it's a really weird design for a Grimlock. Now, in hindsight, it's actually handling some elements of Grimlock a lot better than some modern ones are, especially in the more budgeted range. Like it's just like the fact that the beast mode tail turns into the legs like the G1 toy does, without any like awkwardness in the proportions somewhere. So credit for that. But for the most part, yeah, it's still not good. I think it's in the terrible range. Not that low. Not that low. But, well, actually, no. Let's be fair here. Let's be fair here. I do still think it's terrible level, but like if Grimlock didn't have that combiner mode, I'd put him up here, or I would even put him up too harsh. But it's the fact that Mega Dinobot looks and plays so badly that puts him like still in the terrible category. We're down to the Power Core 2-packs. Now, admittedly, I think for the most part, I was kind to these because there are some really good ones. It's when they started taking those 5-pack torso figures and throwing them into 2-packs with a bad minicon or a repaint minicon, that's when things started to get kind of bad on those. Because a lot of them weren't designed to actually function with those minicons, and the minicons themselves were all terrible, outside of the one from Smolder that turned into an axe. Like, that's the only one that really worked. All the other ones were basically just a humanoid figure with ball joints that did a yoga pose to pretend like it was an accessory. And like it's supposed to be a robot mode weapon, a vehicle mode weapon, and then like armor for the combined mode. And like none of them look good, except for Smolder's. That's the only one that looked good. So I'm going to put it in too harsh, mostly because, yeah, I admitted, like, a lot of those 2-packs were really good. Like, I keep saying Smolder, because Smolder's great. Beast Hunter Bumblebee, the Cyberverse upscale. And thank God that was a one-wave experiment, and they haven't gone back to that yet. So, yeah, this one was still really, really bad to do. It's a novelty, to be sure. Because it is just, it's like getting an upscale knockoff except it's official. On its own, yeah, it's just a terrible design. It is a terrible idea. The idea that you can take that tiny little $5 figure, upscale it to a $15 deluxe at the time, and go, this is what you get. And no upgrade to the paint, by the way, and no upgrade to the joints outside of like switching ball joints for Universal. Yeah. No. Revenge of the Fallen Demolishor. I still get flack because I dislike this toy, and everyone claims, like, you just don't like it because it's different. Like, different does not mean good, right? Can we, like, agree on that something can be different without being good? I could make you a smoked salmon, like a lovely, like, seafood dish of smoked salmon, and then drizzle it with butterscotch, right? That's different. But it's not good. No, I ask simple things of my toys. If it's a vehicle, I expect it to roll. If it's a robot, I expect it to be able to stand without having to prop itself up on its arms. This toy does neither of those things. On top of all the other problems that this thing has, it's still a mess. I hate this toy. I absolutely hate this toy. Build-A-Rule Thundercracker. This pretty falls into the same thing. I mean, I'm gonna put it low into horrendous because it's where all Build-A-Rule Armada toys deserve to go. Energons were marginally better, but yeah, the Armada ones were all trash. And yeah, Starscream was no different, which means Thundercracker was no different. Same story as the hot rod or hot shot. Sorry. Except yes, the vehicle mode looks better. That's really the only reason I'm putting it higher up. Animorph Tobias. I actually went to a toy store a little bit ago, and they actually had a loose one for like $10, and I almost bought it just to do the repaint everyone said should always exist, which is that thing with its shirt painted black and my logo stickered onto the front. And you know, that's doable. That's still doable. The toy itself is meh. So in the realm of Animorphs, it's like on par. So how about this? I'm gonna put it in. No, not too harsh. It's still a bad, boring toy, with no accessories, no real like great level of articulation. You know, and then of course like, you know, it just doesn't look. It's just not a great toy. It's just like it's not a great play pattern. So I'm leaving it bad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have to bash on the toy that looks like me again. Beast Machines Silverbolt. You know, considering I worked on the script for that toy for a year, and I genuinely consider it to be my masterpiece. I genuinely consider that to be the best video I've ever made. I'm still shocked that it's gotten so few views compared to other Plastic Addict victims from back then. I went back and looked at those views the other day, and like I'm really shocked at how low the view count is compared to everything else. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it. It's like genuinely my favorite thing I've ever done. The toy itself is, the toy itself is horrendous. Terrible colors, terrible scaling, very bad looking beast mode. Very, you know, like really cheats out by having like half of its beast mode bulk as just like a big shield weapon. It's literally nothing that Beast Machines Silverbolt's toy should have been. If Legacy gets any kind of Beast Machines love, it needs to be Vehicons, Jetstorm especially, and Silverbolt. Like, I need like a Voyager class Beast Machines Silverbolt that actually looks like he does in the show. I don't think that's too big of an ask for Legacy, considering they're doing weirder things than that. Alright, okay, so yeah, so I don't know why I duplicated one, but we also have Luke and the X-Wing. This one is a little bit better. I think at the time, I think in the review, I said if you have to have one, go for the Snow Speeder. I'm going to amend that because the Snow Speeder is at least like it's just, I don't know. Like I feel like the X-Wing mold actually like has more of a transformation to it and uses more of its parts to actually make Luke, whereas the Snow Speeder just kind of like, you know, like folds up onto his back, you know, and that's your transformation. So I'm gonna amend that. I think the X-Wing is just slightly better. It's still bad though. Titanium Soundwave, the big diaper Soundwave. Yeah, so you've got a tape recorder mode that looks like no tape recorder has ever looked. You've got a decent little laser beak, admittedly, and then you've got what at the time, keep in mind, like, for as weird as this toy was, with its very bad proportions, all this slide joints in its legs to transform it that didn't work, and just some really odd proportion choices, this was the best thing we had for a modern G1 Soundwave for a long, long time. That's kind of scary. It's still horrendous. I wouldn't put it bottom tier, but it's extremely bad. It's a very, very bad toy. We're gonna skip over and we're just gonna go to this last one, which is Universe Silverbolt, and yeah, I think I've admitted, like, too harsh. The color scheme's terrible, but literally everything else about the toy is fine. The articulation is good, the sculpt is good, transformation is fun. Yeah, like, I think really the only thing that's bad about it is how bad the color scheme is, and I've said many times in the past, I kind of regret this review because it really didn't deserve it. It's not that bad, and if you like the colors, there's literally nothing wrong with it. So yeah, definitely too harsh on that one. And then yeah, there is no debate. Titanium Megatron at the bottom of the list. It's been a long time since I reviewed that toy, and I played with a lot more Transformers since then. I've gone back to get more Transformers I never experienced before. I have seen many, many toys suggestive of Plastic Addict. I still have yet to find one that's even remotely close to as bad as Beast Machines, or as a Titanium Megatron. absolutely terrible all the way around. Like literally no redeeming qualities. Very a poorly designed tank mode that in the real world would never work. Very bad and sloppy paint job. Robot mode is flat and uninteresting. Articulation is a mess because the engineering is so bad. Diecast used in the worst way possible. Terribly loose joints that fall apart all the time. It's just all around just the worst Transformer I've ever messed with. By far. Now, as I look at this list, I think the placement of everything is fine. See this other land speeder here? I'm going to put this other land speeder, like, right here. And we're going to pretend that that is Prime Arachnid, because for some reason, TJOmega duplicated my land speeder image and then forgot to include my my image of Arachnid. So let's just pretend that that's her for whatever weird reason. And just admit, yeah, like she is, again, a very, very bad toy. So she'll go in the low end of the horrendous. And that is this weird little tier list. So there are some that I think are a little bit better than I originally assumed, and some I definitely was too harsh on, but for the most part, yes. I still think Plastic Addict is a really good demonstration of just the worst Transformers that have ever been released, and more importantly, what makes them bad. You know, just for various different reasons. Things that should have been avoided, things that Hasbro really doesn't do anymore, admittedly. So, yeah, like this, like Plastic Addict is always a lesson in, this is how bad a really bad Transformer is. So if you buy something new at retail and you go, oh, well, it doesn't have a waist joint, so this toy sucks. This Dinobot should have come with a sword, so it sucks. No, it doesn't. Like it for what it is. Don't go looking for reasons to hate something. And don't call a toy bad just because it doesn't hit the right nerve for you personally. Or just because it's doing this one thing that you don't like. Don't let that make you ignore everything else that the toy is doing that you should be enjoying. Because when you talk about a bad Transformer, that is what you should be talking about. So, thank you for joining me on this weird little tier list. Thank you to, I can't remember who suggested it, but thank you for suggesting it. Definitely an odd one, but a fun one to do. So, thank you guys for watching. I will see you next time. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.